Well, hey there, it's Keith from groups.com, and I wanted to talk today about some topics around the plugin builder, actually. Recently, I ran into an issue that other developers of complex Bubble plugins may run into themselves, and it actually involved a fix that we will talk about, and I learned some interesting things about GitHub. And well, let's talk about it. We've never done a video that's for other plugin devs. This would also be of interest to other people who are interested in how Bubble works internally. So let's get going. So I am getting ready to push a new version of my Calendar Grid Pro plugin. Now, Calendar Grid Pro is pretty complex. The unminified code for it is about 3,000 lines. And I manage the development of this plugin in its own private development version. And then when I'm ready to push a new version public, I copy the element in question, which is this one, Calendar Grid Pro, and I paste it into the public version of the plugin that's over here. So this is actually Calendar Grid Pro commercial version, okay? There are several reasons that I do this. One is just the general complexity of the plugin, but also I actually use functions that don't compile properly in Clojure Compiler. And so I minify my code myself before publication. And so this creates a little bit of a weirdness, right? Because what I need to do is I need to copy this element from this plugin environment and paste it over into the public one, and thereby replace the current version of Calendar Grid Pro commercial. Now, what will happen when I do that is that Bubble is going to lose the identity of this plugin. And let me talk about that just a little bit and how that all works. So how does the Bubble plugin editor know that one plugin is that plugin versus being some other plugin element? I shouldn't be using the term plugin so interchangeably with plugin elements, should I? It turns out that all plugins and their actions and their exposed states, and then of course actions themselves, separate action elements, have unique IDs. And we can't actually see and change those unique IDs in the plugin editor itself, but we can see them in GitHub when we synchronize our plugin with GitHub. So let's check that out real quick. I'm over here in Calendar Grid Pro, and let's see. You can see one reason that I manage the development of my plugin in a separate plugin instance, right? There's like a ton of releases here, right? I'm constantly developing new little things and testing them, and then sometimes I decide that's a dumb idea, and I don't want that exposed to the users of the public plugin because that will just confuse them, right? So let's look at synchronize with GitHub. So this is my private development version of Calendar Grid Pro. And if I synchronize with GitHub, what's going to happen is that Bubble is going to push the code for my plugin over to its GitHub repository. And now let's go look at that repository. I also had it up in a separate window, but this will cause it to reload. So here we are in the Bubble plugin Calendar Grid, which is my private version of the plugin. And when we look at our code, right, we see that there's this folder called elements. That must be where my elements live, right? We'll drill down into elements. And now what you'll see is that there are a whole bunch of folders with funny names. These folders represent the elements that are inside my plugin. So I'm going to go back over into the plugin view, and you'll see I've got various and sundry plugin elements, some of which are just little test things. Some are things that I might release in the future, et cetera, et cetera. One of them is a little custom element that I built for one of the Calendar Grid Pro users who needed a special feature, but I wasn't ready to release it in the product yet, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're seeing here is these are all of my plugin elements. And then one of these will be Calendar Grid Pro itself. And I'm not sure which one it is. Let's see. It's 1, 2, is it 3 down? let's see, is it this one? If we drill in here, we can look at the element actions. Oh yeah, this must be Calendar Grid Pro because these actions are very extensive. Yeah. So this plugin element is Calendar Grid Pro, the development version, right? And so you can see here that this is the action for, oh, there's my two head thing again. This is my action for clear dates, right? Clears the date selection. And this folder name is this action's unique ID. Now, it's not the whole thing. It's just this first part, AAL, capital A, capital A, capital L. Similarly, if I go back up to the top level, here is Calendar Grid Pro, and its unique ID is again, AAL. I really just screwed that up in what I was talking about, right? Because when I go down here into actions, this is the unique ID for this action. It's AAZ. I was actually just showing you before that the unique ID for the element itself is AAL. But I think you get what I'm talking about. All of the components of our plugin, the element itself, the actions, and the exposed states have unique IDs. And the unique IDs are these three-letter codes that are before the dash here. And we'll talk about why there's a dash now, because you probably, if you've used Sync with GitHub, seen these folder names before, and you're like, why are they longer now? Okay, so let's see, back into our development plugin. What I want to do now, I'm actually ready to release this. I've gone to settings, right? And I have scroll. Look at all those releases. I have actually just submitted a new version so that I have a kind of place they can go back to, right? So this is, I'm ready to push this. I submit a new version here in my development plugin just so I've got, kind of a bookmark. It's like, here's the state of this element at this time. And in fact, I have an earlier version of it that's down here that I'm going to return to later to continue work. So what's going on here today is that I have some new features that they've just been pending for a long time. And I was working on another really new complex feature that's super cool. It's a new way to visualize date ranges inside of CG Pro. But it's just not ready yet. But I didn't want to keep my users from having some of these other cool features that are totally ready. So what I did is I just took out like kind of the hooks to the features that aren't done. And now I've got a plugin that's ready to publish. So the code for the new features is in there, the code that's not working, but we're never going to touch it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this plugin over to the public one. Now, I'm ready to do that. Let's go and check out what happens. Let's go to, here we'll go to Elements, and now I can right click on Calendar Grid Pro, and you may or may not, there we go. And I can right click it, and I can copy. You may or may not see the copy flyout that comes up. I don't know. Loom's a little weird. So I'm going to copy the element, and then I'm going to go over here to, this is my public version of the plugin, and I'm going to right click in here, and I'm going to paste the element. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to see that now I have two versions of Calendar Grid Pro in this plugin. This is the old one, and this is the new one that I just copied. So one thing about the plugin builder is that when you copy an element from one plugin to another plugin, you saw that I tried to paste on top of this guy, but Bubble doesn't let you do that. What's going to happen is it just creates a new plugin element. And what we're going to see in a moment is that this plugin element has a different ID than the original element. Let's just watch that real quick. Now, before I synchronize this new version of the plugin, right, where I just added an updated Calendar Grid Pro element, let's go and see what our GitHub repo for this project looks like, okay? I'm not going to click this yet. Let's go and look at it right now. So I pushed it last night, and you'll see that what we have is an elements folder, and it's got two elements in it. One is the old version of Calendar Grid Pro. The other one is this Date Range Builder plugin, and I'm pretty sure it's AAN that is Calendar Grid Pro. But let's just drill into it just to check. And yes, it has a ton of actions, and the first action is clear dates. All right, so we are now, oh, boy, my head, look at that. I've gotten lots of heads. There we go. Whoa, that's a nightmare, isn't it? So this AAN is the ID of my old Calendar Grid Pro. Now, let's go back over into Calendar Grid Pro. This is the public version. I'm going to sync it with GitHub. See, it's telling me the current version's been modified since your last sync. And that's because we just did this copy operation. So I'm going to sync it with GitHub. This is going to push my new code over into my GitHub repo. All right. And then if we go and refresh our GitHub repo, let's see what happened there. Let's go back to our code page. And let's see, let's refresh it just to make sure. Refreshing the page. If we look in elements, we should see 3 now. Yes, we do. So here is AAN, which is the original Calendar Grid Pro. Here is AAT, which is the little date range builder plugin. And then here, the third one, AAU, is the new version of Calendar Grid Pro that I want to replace the old version. Okay? If we look in here in AAU, we're going to see, let's see, params clear dates is the first action. There we go. You'll notice something else kind of interesting. So let's see, elements AAU, element actions AAT. You will note that even though Bubble has given this plugin a new top level identity, the identity of its actions is the same as in the previous version of Calendar Grid Pro. So if I go and look at my element actions, right, I've got AAT, AAZ, AA small a, AA small b. And then if I were to go over to, let's see, AAN is the original Calendar Grid Pro, you will see I've got AAT, AAZ, AA small a, AA small b, etc. This itself is kind of interesting because if you copy a plugin element within the plugin editor, what's going to happen is it will create a plugin element with a new unique ID at the top, but the ID, the actions, and the states is still the same as the other plugin. And this, in fact, will cause you a conflict because the Bubble plugin editor cannot tell those actions apart. So there's still another feature that like Bubble could add, and I've discussed this with them, but maybe we'll save that for another time. But it's true that at present, it's somewhat difficult to take a plugin and use it as the base for a new plugin, because if you've got those elements within the same plugin, those action IDs and those exposed state IDs are going to conflict. It's just the way things are right now. But back to the topic at hand. What I need to do now is I need to take note of the original plugin ID, right? So I'm going to write this down, that the old Calendar Grid Pro was AAN. Okay, so I've just put it over in my notepad. Of course, I could refer to this video, but it's important that we remember this name. And the case is important, okay? It's capital A, capital A, capital N. All right, take a quick pause and continue. So now my next step here is I'm going to go back over in the plugin editor. I'm going to delete the old Calendar Grid Pro, and then I'm going to resynchronize with GitHub, and I'm going to be left with AAT, which is that little utility plugin, and AAU, which is the new version of Calendar Grid Pro, and I'm going to use GitHub Desktop to change the folder name of this guy back to AAN so that the Bubble plugin editor, or not the plugin editor, the Bubble editor itself will understand that this is the replacement for the old Calendar Grid Pro. All right, so I am back in my plugin for the public version of Calendar Grid Pro. I'm going to go to Elements, and now this is really scary. I'm going to delete this element. I'm going to click the trash can, okay? And Bubble's going to warn me, are you sure you want to delete that? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Confirm. All right, so now I've got my date range builder and my Calendar Grid Pro copy elements here, and I'll go to settings, and I'm going to resynchronize. In fact, I'm going to refresh this page just so we can be sure. Let's see, scroll down to the bottom. See, the current version has been modified since the last sync. So this is going to push an updated version of the code over to my GitHub repo. And so I will click synchronize with GitHub. And now when I go back, when I go back over into my repo, you will see that I'm left with these two elements. And this element, AAU, is the one that I need to rename. So I'm going to break this video because I'm only sharing my web screen, and I think I will append some other stuff. So hold on, and we'll just... Okay, now I'm sharing my entire screen so you can see what I'm going to do next. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this repository to my local machine, and I'm on Windows, and so I'm using GitHub Desktop for Windows. And let's see, can we do this in a way where you can see my beautiful head while I do this? I think you can. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my repos, and I'm going to clone a repository. And the repository I want to get is Calendar Grid Pro-1, right? So this is the public release of Calendar Grid Pro. I'm going to hit clone. And now what this is going to do is it's going to take my repo and copy it to my local machine. And now what I can do is I can go show in Explorer. This will be a little different if you're on a Mac or whatever. And here is my local repo for Calendar Grid Pro. I'll go into Elements, and there are my guys, AAT and AAU. AAU is the one whose name we need to change. And I'm just going to rename this directory. I'm going to rename it from AAU to AAN, all caps, okay? Let's see here. We will rename. Oh, there's my sister on Facebook. Hi, sister. Let's see. AAN. Did we get that right? AAN, yes. CG Pro plugin ID is AAN. Now, when we go back into GitHub Desktop, we will see that all of these files changed because we changed the name of that directory. So there's a whole bunch of changed stuff. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a commit, changed CG Pro, new version to AAN for a commit message. All right. Doesn't really matter what this says, but this will help us. We'll commit it to master, and then we will push back up to GitHub. So we'll take this change code, push it back into GitHub, and pushing to origin, hang on, resolving deltas, blah, 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 blah. And then now, if we go and we look at our repo for this, we should see, if we refresh the page, aha, here we go. Here is our little utility plugin, and here is the Calendar Grid Pro element that I've renamed to AAN to reestablish continuity within the Bubble editor. So it knows that this is the replacement for the old version of Calendar Grid Pro, essentially. Now we go back over into our plugin page. This is the plugin editor. I'm going to refresh this page. And what we should see, oops, why do I have two versions? Oh, it's because this is open. It's a little confused there. I'm going to close the other one. Can I now edit you? See, this is live like real stuff. Let's see. Bubble plugin editor. Mm-hmm. Well, I had to do a little bit of magic there because I believe that what we were just seeing is that if I have both of those plugin windows open, the dev one and the public one, I think the Bubble plugin editor gets a little confused because it's like, I see that you have plugin AAN open in two windows, and I'm not going to let you edit it. So I closed my dev version and then reloaded this page, and it looks like we can make mods now. So this is the public version of Calendar Grid Pro in the plugin editor. And what I'm going to do now is you will see that the repo on GitHub, oops, I can't select that text for some reason. The repo is ahead of the current version. Clicking the button will try to merge the changes. So let's do that. We are now sucking the code from our repo back up into the plugin editor. And while we won't be able to tell, what is now happening is that the ID for this new plugin is or the new, not the new plugin, the replacement for Calendar Grid Pro is now AAN again. And so as we suck that stuff up, we will shortly, we're just waiting for synchronization. All right, there we go. So the new version has been fetched. The editor will refresh when you click reload. And we should over in our elements. Okay, so we've got Calendar Grid Pro copy, which we just changed the ID of. We've got the old date range builder. We're all good. Now, before I push this live, I need to do a couple things. I will Now, having established its identity, it's really slow. Okay, I will remove the copy part here, right? This is just Calendar Grid Pro. Now, I don't want my plugin to be minified because it breaks closure compiler, so I have to do this little trick. Window do not minify plugin equals true. I got to remember to do that every time I push a version here, or else the version I push will be borked. Now I can go to settings. And now I'm ready to release my new version of Calendar Grid Pro. And this new version has a lot of cool stuff. You can set selections now. It has a new labeling feature, so you can actually put little notes on the dates, and you can forcibly change the background color of them. And then it has this date range list building functionality that Petter over in the forums had requested long ago, and I built him a special plugin, and now that feature is going to be in this version of Calendar Grid Pro. So I will click Submit a New Version, and let's see. This is adds selected state, adds set selection, note labels, and date range list actions. Oops. Date range list actions. Date range list actions. This is kind of a point update. And we will submit our plugin. Crossing our fingers. And we're going to wait. I'm going to enjoy some coffee. All right. Successfully published 1.9.3. Let's check that this is still working. So let's see, over in my apps, I actually have an application Calendar Grid Pro 2 demo that I have given a license for Calendar Grid Pro 2. And this is kind of where I test stuff like this. So we're going to load this app, and let's see, we'll go to plugins, and it's got Calendar Grid Pro 2. It's currently on version 1.8.0. Shall we dare to upgrade to 1.9.3? So there, I have upgraded to 1.9.3. I'm going to refresh my Bubble editor. And when I refresh, what I should see, if I go to my pages, I should see that, yes, it still sees Calendar Grid Pro as Calendar Grid Pro, and I don't have to replace it. If I hadn't done this updating of the folder name, the editor would see a breaking change, and it would show this as a missing element. And so this was a problem for me in the past until I figured this out. And it actually became a problem again recently because of a very strange little thing. And that's one thing I want to talk about now. I think what I'm going to do is stop this video and just go back to my window sharing mode, okay? And then we'll stitch these videos together. Okay, see you in a minute. I kind of spoke too soon because I actually still need my full desktop to explain this. So I recently ran into a bug. I'd say not really a bug. It was just kind of an, unanticipated strangeness that happens on certain Mac systems and definitely on Windows. If you keep your eye on Bubble releases, you might have noticed that there was a mysterious update on 2.12 amongst a bunch of other mysterious updates. Fix plugin GitHub sync to not rely on case-sensitive folder names. What is this about? So you saw before when I was saying that when we sync to GitHub, we get these names that are separated by dashes for the folders. That dash with the extra text for the folder names is the fix for this particular problem. And the way I discovered this issue was as follows. So in my plugins, you may be familiar with List Shifter, and List Shifter has a ton of actions. And in the latest version, it grew even more actions. And I started to see something strange. Here is the edit mode for the plugin List Shifter, and here are its actions. There's a lot of them. There are more than 20. And then its exposed states. Similarly, has a very large number of exposed states. What was happening is that if I synchronized this plugin to GitHub, everything seemed okay. But then when I went to GitHub desktop and I went to fetch that plugin, I would see a different number of folders in Windows Explorer than were in the plugin. So for example, like there were 23 actions, but then when I went to examine my actions in list shift, element actions, when I went to inspect the element actions, instead of seeing, there's 23 now, I would see 20. And the issue, it turns out, is that different file systems, the Windows file system being one example, and Linux file systems being another example, different file systems handle case sensitivity in different ways. And so Bubble's original technique of having these 3-letter IDs started to cause collisions for me. So for example, you'll see this action, it begins AAS. So it's cap A, cap A, cap S. If we search for AAS, I think what we'll see here, so you see there's an action called AAS, all caps, and there's an action called AA small s. Windows sees those folders as being the same because it's a case-insensitive file system. And so what was happening is that rather than fetching the entire list of actions, the file system couldn't handle that, and GitHub Desktop was actually silently having an error whereby it was saying, oh, there's a namespace collision here, and so we're only going to look at the most recent folder with this name. So Chris Rogers over in Bubble Support worked through this with me and added this feature such that when you synchronize your plugins with GitHub now, they have this extra text on them that makes them unique regardless of your file system. So if you're on Linux, which is a case-sensitive file system, or you're on a Mac or Windows, which are case-insensitive file systems, you'll be able to fetch all of the folders. So that's what that fix was about. I think it's pretty interesting, and that was really mysterious and hard to debug. But anyway, I hope this gives you a little more insight into how Bubble understands the unique IDs of your plugin elements. That's all for now. Enjoy. More fun later. Bye.